I get pulled into kind of like the important I might say no to the birthday cake. We go into a side room. It's like this important person's office. And he tells me that he needs my help to win the war.
Thousands of companies show up to sell their technology to the U.S. Department of Defense each year. But so few will transition from proof of concept to true production across the valley of death. The select few who do, their stories are rarely told. Until now. I'm Noah Scheinbaum, and this is Crossing the Valley.
Hey everyone, my guest today is a true polymath. He can move between worlds, he picks up new topics, it's all second nature to him. And he happens to be one of the best storytellers that I know. His name is Brian Streem, and he went from NYU Film School to being one of the first, if not the first, drone videographer for Hollywood. And today he lives in Ukraine, where he manufactures boxes that allow drones to operate in GPS-denied environments. Sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Brian Streem. All right, so Brian,
Yes.
we're in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Why are we here? You're all the way back from Ukraine, I believe.
Yeah, I guess we're here because someone invited me to be here. I would not have come if I had not been invited. But yes, I've been. I'm from New York, but I have been to Boston a bunch. But I've been living in Kiev, Ukraine, for the last 14 months or so, and I have a team of a couple of folks out there.
There is no Amtrak Acela between Kiev and Boston. That is
No, it's actually a huge pain in the ass to get here.
Well, we're glad you're here, and this is fascinating. So you've been in Ukraine now for what, about 2 years?
14 months. I got there. I was supposed to be there. I was doing January of 2024. I was doing an integration with a drone company of my product. We build a vision navigation system designed to kind of defeat GPS jamming and spoofing. The company asked me if I wanted to go into Ukraine and help them with a demo. So I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks, first week of February 2024. I had zero idea what to expect whatsoever. I show up, and my first kind of week there, I get pulled into a important political military person's office. It's kind of like the Pentagon of Ukraine. And I walk into a room, the whole building is dark. There are sandbags on all the windows. The lights are out in the entire building. And I open a door to a little room, and there's like 4 people eating birthday cake. And they offer me a piece of birthday cake. And I think I say no, which actually, in retrospect, should have had the birthday cake. Anyway, I might say no to the birthday cake. We go into a side room. It's like this important person's office, and he tells me that he needs my help to win the war.
And you said, "Thank you, Mr. Zelensky."
And I said to him, "What would you like me to do?" And essentially, he kind of he had a very large map of Ukraine, Russia behind him, and he started to talk about drone missions that he'd like to kind of engage my product on. And I kind of said, "Okay." And then I essentially got introduced to many different drone platforms and drone companies building many different kinds of platforms. Some platforms that go long ways, short ways, fixed wing platforms, mostly fixed wing platforms.
I'm kind of picturing the movie Scratch. I think, what is it? Catch Me If You Can. Or so you may be wondering how I got in this situation.
Yeah.
Do you ever? How much do you wake up every morning and kind of pinch yourself like I am no longer in Brooklyn?
Yeah, how I got to doing this is will never not be bewildering, confusing, and also somewhat expected. So when I was in film school, I had a screenwriting teacher who told me that good stories. Now this sounds a little like a contradiction, but it's not. Good stories are both unpredictable and yet inevitable. They sound like they're juxtaposed, or they're two totally different things, but no, it's like when you watch Breaking Bad, the whole ride of Walter White's rise to being a meth king, you don't know what's going to happen, but by the end, you look back and you go, yeah, of course.
Got to end a certain
way. Of course, that's like what happened. Of course he succeed. Of course, he was smarter. Of course, his math was better. Of course, he was willing to go further. And of course, I don't want to ruin Breaking Bad for those who haven't seen it. And of course, it ended the way it ended.
It had to end that way.
It had to end that way. It had to. So I'm like, part of me goes like, yeah, I guess like this, like it was destiny to some weird extent.
So this is a great framing, which is Brian. Where are we on Brian's hero's journey?
We're at the rise. We're at season 1, episode 5 of Breaking Bad.
All right.
And like, what people talk about, Roman empires was. I think my Roman empire is doing things. I'm like, what episode of Breaking Bad am I currently in at the moment? What scene is this? Where am I in my thing? I would say season 2, somewhere in the middle of season 2.
So we're early on. Let's clue everyone in here.
Yeah.
Take us back to the pilot. So we're using a lot of film and TV metaphor, and that's because your background, probably, it would have been more likely at this phase in your career for you to be directing blockbusters than living in a war zone. So what happened?
My entire life, I wanted to make movies. So I went to NYU Film School. And was very interested. I was both very interested in the art and technology of filmmaking. I like subtle films about a man who makes a mistake, like movies about sad men, like dark comedies, things like that. But I'm also very interested in high technology, like the technology of cinema. So I after NYU Film School, I started to produce movies and TV commercials and things like that. And I was having some level of modest success. And then in 2013, 2014, I saw a video of a little drone on YouTube. And this was before drones were legal in America. Like the flight
early on.
Yeah. And I decided to buy a big expensive, I must have been out of my fucking mind, but I decided to buy a big expensive Swedish made custom carbon fiber drone. And I was like, I'm going to buy
What kind of drone was it?
They're out of business. I might have been their first and last customer. It was, I can't remember the name of the company, but
Swedish are not known for drones necessarily. So this is a niche product.
I was so young and naive. I liked the way it looked.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you had taste. I hear that's the differentiator.
Yes, it was. I'm an aesthetic individual, and I went to Sweden with a partner at the time. Drone almost crashed multiple times. Still somehow decided to buy this drone, and actually brought the drone from Sweden and brought it into Kiev during the Maidan, which was kind of like a revolution in the country with kicking their kind of pro-Russian president out of the country. I was there to film Chernobyl because my idea was I was going to film Chernobyl. I was like, I need some sort of cool, because I want to do drone cinematography. So I need something cool to film that would be kind of like a marketing asset.
So you had some deep roots in Ukraine.
Somehow me, drones, and Ukraine are some sort of cosmic intersection of the universe that will be studied long after I'm gone. And film Chernobyl, witnessed the revolution. I was pretty naive. I didn't really know politically what was going on in the country at the time. And then I remember coming back to Brooklyn, and I had this big expensive drone, and I remember it was snowing. I remember getting out of the airport, getting out of my taxi in the winter in Brooklyn with this drone, going, my God, what did you just do? About a week later, that drone crashed in a cornfield in Pennsylvania, and I remember my partner at the time. He ran over to the drone, and I just remember I lit a cigarette, and I'm just like, oh boy. This is not I ran into the drone, it's on the gravity has succeeded. The drone is toast. I need to call my insurance broker.
But you had the foresight to take insurance.
Yes,
of
course. And
wow.
this was a thing, but I also had no experience in this, and the industry had no experience on this. And I am like, are they going to pay this claim? I remember going to it, and thank God I did get a check to reimburse me for that drone. And I remember I was at a drone conference a few months later, and I walked by some dude's booth, and he was a drone salesman. A drone insurance salesman.
Yeah.
He had a booth at a drone conference, And we're just chit-chatting. And I remember he goes to me, he goes, yeah, you hear about this guy who crashed this... And I'm like, oh no.
What an idiot.
What an idiot. Yeah, what an idiot. He goes, yeah, the whole industry is like really starting to be scared. I go, oh no, that sounds terrible for the industry. And I'm, walked away from that going, oh man. But I got a check from the insurance company, ended up buying another drone. And then right away, I ended up getting a big project in filming like the Burj Khalifa.
You flew to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, flew in Abu Dhabi, doubled my money, and I was like, holy shit, I was right. People want drones.
How did you get that deal?
Through some other guy who had a connection, and it all came together like really quick.
Okay,
really
I gotta ask you, did you grow up in an entrepreneurial family? Like this is
No.
this is not taught. This is like in your bones.
No,
You're a
I just kind of listen. For me, like I was never really passionate about drones. I was passionate about like unique camera technology, and like the drone, whatever. It was just like a way to kind of like get a camera, like fly a camera. That was like kind of like the sexy thing for me. So I've been very interested in unique image acquisition types of technologies.
I love this. I think this is what we call first principles thinking.
Sure. So really quickly, I had some people that wanted to invest some money in my company. And then I was one of the first 5 or 6 legal drone companies in America. So I had a 333 exemption. I testified in front of Congress for drone regulations. I mean, I don't know about what I know, but like they asked, pretty much like, you asked me to go somewhere and I'll show up. Okay. And then I had from 2014 to like 2018, it was like if there was a drone shot in a movie or TV show on Netflix or HBO or whatever, it was probably my company doing the drone cinematography. So we did we did Fast and the Furious movies, we did Steven Spielberg movies, we did movies that won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. So we were doing very high-end stuff, and I mean, listen, I hated the business. It was a terrible service company, overly regulated. I mean, we would have made more money cleaning carpets. I mean, like as a service company.
Really?
Well, yeah, it was like, I've been on the record as saying this, in some instances, Hollywood drone cinematography is harder than military drone missions. Why? Well, because there's an aesthetic quality to Hollywood drone cinematography. Faster, slower, graceful, feather it out, make it pretty. You don't have to make anything pretty in the military. Like it's not about that. It's not about that. So there's an aesthetic and an aesthetic quality that it's like, it's like eye of the beholder stuff. So it requires talent of people.
Yeah.
And God damn, if you have to build a company off of the talent of people, it's terrible.
Isn't that every company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not when the person is like a hard to scale critical person who's like, on the front. But
very niche talent.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, in 2017, 2018, I had started to kind of build a software product. And the idea was to essentially allow drone cinematographers get more precise drone footage.
You yourself were building the software.
I had hired maybe 2 or 3 software engineers, essentially taking all the profits from my service company and funneling it into this like exotic drone cinematography software.
We'll come back to this because I think services funding software development is actually a really interesting model that has a lot of implications.
Maybe if I had to do it all over again, I just would have I wouldn't have done the service. Like it's a hard story to tell like investors and stuff when you're doing it.
Yeah,
like no one wants to hear it. I thought that no one wanted to hear it. You're better off just kind of starting at blank page.
No, investors rather fund your product from zero.
Yes, exactly.
Not that distracting services stuff.
I had to go through a very hard pivot where I essentially fired everyone in my service company. I was like, screw this, y'alls are toast, goodbye. And people had thought I had lost my mind. I mean, I actually had like a multi-million-dollar revenue service business that I was miserable doing, was not making me happy. And I kind of just like, I believed that I could do something better. I never took a business class in my life. I didn't know what a P&L was. I didn't know what a cap table was. I didn't know a damn thing when I started.
Yeah.
But really, it took me maybe 10 minutes to realize at the beginning that I had a terrible business. I was like, oh shit, we have to like hire all these drone people with all this equipment and all this travel and transportation. Immediately, I realized like, oh shit, this is going to be a brutal slog. And it took me, years to kind of figure out how to like pivot away from that. It was brutal. brutal. The operative word of startup is brutal. I essentially fired everyone at some point in 2018, went into the darkness of the night and built this software product. And then I was sad and desperate in Buffalo, New York, look at some sort of investor CEO speed dating seminar. And if you are looking for money in Buffalo, New York, you are fucked. And I was as fucked as you could be. And I sat across from this table, sort of 4-minute speed dating thing with an investor. You show them what you're doing. They say, thank you. You're fucked. And then you go off to die a slow death. I had sat across the table from a guy named Warren Katz, who was the managing director of the Techstars DoD Program. So the Air Force and AF Ventures was paid Techstars money to essentially run their accelerator. DoD was like, we don't know anything about startups. We don't know where they are, how they act, how they walk, how they talk, how they think. But you, Techstars, you do. So find innovative companies and help inject them into the bloodstream of the DoD. So this guy Warren says to me, I think the U.S. Air Force would be very interested in this. And I looked at him and I was like, what are you, fucking serious? Like, I'm like pretty much out of business. Like, there's no way what on earth do I have to offer the United States? Don't they have all this stuff already? I probably sincerely never in my life maybe met someone who like worked in the military. What do I know about the military? I see angry men yelling at dudes, telling them to like fix their beds, like drill sergeants. Like that's what I know. And he tells me that he's the managing director of this program, and that I should fill out an application, and the application closes in 20 minutes. And I got up from the table and I went to my computer and I filled out this application in 5 minutes. And then a month and a half later, I moved from New York to Boston to be at the Techstars U.S. Air Force Ventures technology program. And it was actually, I think it was a somewhat prestigious thing. I think a few thousand companies applied, 10 companies got into it. And I was meeting people from the soft community from, Booz Allen, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed, you name it. I'm meeting generals, I'm meeting colonels.
This is a whole new world.
It's a whole new world. But I immediately go, oh, they have way more money than Hollywood does. That was my first impression. And my second thing I realized is like 2020, this was January 2020. This was very early in this space. But I remember a lot of people saying AI this, AI that. I knew I didn't know a goddamn thing about AI, but I was pretty confident they didn't either. And I was kind of like, I bet you I could fool them that I know more than they do. And I have a very, very simple rule of sales, which is that you cannot sell stuff to people if they do not know you exist. And here I am. I'm a 3-person company. I have all these people that seem to have money. There's like $1 zillion out there. And I pretty much have this stunning revelation at some point that every DoD email ends in .mil. And the problem with my service company is I got really good at like growth hacking. Like I figured out leads lists of everyone in like Hollywood, and I figured out like how to mass email all of them. So I had a problem with that service business. I essentially gobbled the entire market in like 6 months because I figured out how to like use shrewd growth hacking techniques to kind of like gobble the whole market. And there was like kind of no market left to go. It was just a small market.
Picking the sandbox and playing.
That's exactly right. And now I'm like, okay, much bigger market. I could use some of the tricks that I used in my service drone cinematography service company. And I built a tool that scraped every .mil email address off of Google. And during COVID, I sat in a log cabin next to Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire, and I cold emailed 50,000 people at the Department of Defense.
What was your delivery rate and your open rate?
It was, I actually have the statistics on this, and I have a slide in a presentation. But no, I mean, it was, listen, even if it's 2% of people that want to talk to you, of 50,000, you will be on the phone for a year. And that's pretty much what happened, is that over the next 9 months, I probably spoke to about 2,000 people cold on Zoom calls. And I asked them pretty much, and the second rule of sales is, never, ever, ever. I mean, listen, my naivete was my biggest weapon here because I was talking to people I shouldn't have. People were passing my name around. And I didn't know anything, but I knew the one thing. And the one thing you have to do is if you want to do this is never, ever, ever open your mouth first. I always started with, so Noah, who are you? Tell me about yourself. What do you do? Oh, really, Noah? That's interesting. Tell me more about that. Really? Oh, that's is that like this or is it like this? Oh, okay. So it's more like that. Well, why don't have you ever tried to do that? Tell me more about that. And I just ask questions.
Yeah.
So it's a little hard for, people get anxious and they feel like they need to like just start pitching their product. But I didn't really have any like real product yet. And I kind of
customer discovery.
Yes. In the business books, they call it market research and customer discovery. And I actually wasn't doing, I was doing customer discovery, but really I learned about phase 2 SBIRs. And I was just kind of like, well, if I have I just need to get these MOU signed.
Will you sign my memo?
Will you sign my memo? And I was like, at the time I believed I had a 20% chance if I submitted an MOU, I would get $1 million. And I remember when Warren told that to me, I was like, holy shit, this is the greatest chance in the universe to win one. So if I have a 1 in 4-ish chance, I need 4 MOUs. Because then one of them will give me $1 million. So, that's what I thought. That's what I
something like that. Yeah. All of our SBIR advisor folks are thinking about this.
Yes,
right
now. But yes, I was doing customer discovery, and time again, I asked people what their biggest problem was, and everyone said GPS denied navigation.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was building my drone cinematography tool that kind of had a feature of the product that would solve this problem. And I essentially decided to kind of pivot the product like 2 degrees to the right and make the feature of my product the main product, because that's what the market was telling me.
And that feature was?
The feature was essentially like we take a couple cameras below a drone. Those cameras go into a little NVIDIA computer that has fancy software on it.
Yep.
And attached to that NVIDIA computer is a little hard drive. And on that little hard drive is a previously acquired 3D terrain map database that we get from third-party satellite imagery providers. So as the drone flies, it's like a deep neural network that essentially, it's like facial recognition. It matches what the camera sees to this locally stored terrain database.
Yeah.
So people like it because you can't jam it, you can't spoof it. It doesn't emit or receive any signal. It works daytime, nighttime, different weather conditions, low altitudes, high altitudes, etc.
You, Brian, are, I think, what the investors call a polymath, in that you are able to naturally just navigate between these different worlds of cinematography, the language associated with it, now the military, and then I think you just explained all of this, like this technological architecture in a very seamless way. It's very impressive that you're able to live between those worlds.
Like, listen, like when I like sci-fi military movies. Like I've always liked cool sci-fi
military.
Talking
stuff. Iron Man, or what are we talking about?
I've always had a kind of a penchant for like Minority Report, kind of stuff like that. Yeah, Minority Report is kind of like maybe it's not military tech, but it's close. It's like police. It's close enough.
It's like Palantir's probably mostly there.
Yeah. So yeah, right. So stuff like that. So I made all these relationships, and I managed to win like $7 million or so of non-dilutive capital my first year doing this.
Tell us about your first deal. Was it an SBIR?
D2, P2. I wanted to, I almost bought a Tesla that had that as a license plate.
You go.
I wasn't that close to it.
This was 2020?
Yes, 2020.
That was a tough cycle too, because it was COVID time.
Yes, it was COVID time. And I remember the first time I submitted 3 MOUs, and I got all 3.
Meaning you got all 3?
3 MOU. Funded and approved. And then the second time I submitted, I think 3 more, and I got 2 out of the 3.
So when you say you submitted 3, you had 3 distinct SBIRs, or you had 3 customers on your...
3 different customers, similar technology capabilities.
And they brought money to the table?
No,
they did not.
No.
So there's all a SBIR funds.
By the way, when I was in this Techstars program, I remember there was a phase 1, everyone had submitted a phase 1 sort of a thing.
Yeah.
And I remember that it was people were pulling an all-nighter. All the other 9 companies were pulling all-nighters. And I had done all this phase 1 where I was always responsible. I'm very responsible. So I hired someone who knew what they were doing off of Upwork. I had submitted, and it felt a little weird going home early at this Boston thing when everyone's like scrambling to figure out to submit their phase 1. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm done. I guess I'm going
See
home.
you at the bar, boys.
Yeah, kind of. And then a few weeks later, I was the only schmuck that did not get the phase 1. All these other kids who were around me who were like scrambling, they all got a phase 1. It was like 50,000. I don't know what 50.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I am about to blow my brains out. And I am, once again, sad and desperate. And I'm just like, oh man, I thought I had this. This is not good. And then that's when I concocted the scheme of sending all those emails and doing all that thing. And then
So you said, I'm going to do the phase 1 anyway.
yes, I'm going to do, 2,000
conversations.
That's right. That's right.
That's
right. And then I, won 5 phase 2 SBIRs. I won a couple of TAC-FIs. I won a couple of OTAs. I won a couple other things. But like, listen, the money was nice, but the one thing that was the most valuable thing, and this is like the thing I tell young entrepreneurs, is I figured out what the problem was. Like, you could fuck up everything else, but if you are not solving a real bad problem, you are screwed. You will be screwed in the future. You will build a product that no one wants. By the time you try to launch it, no one buys it. Then you try to pivot, but no one wants to fund you.
Yep.
Like, I pivoted big with the service thing. I pivoted a little bit. I mean, and I was also just tenacious. I was unwilling to fail and I always figured out a way to wiggle myself out of a really dark, sad corner. And like, listen, I got lucky too. If everyone on those phone calls had told me their biggest problem was they needed a time machine, I would have been screwed. I'd be like, well, I don't have no idea how to build a time machine. This was a lot of fun, but I think my time here is over. It just so happened that the problem they said, like, I kind of knew, I had a hunch how to solve it from my cinematography background.
Yeah. Well, I think there's sometimes bringing people who are not of the same world together.
Yeah.
Different perspectives, different just skill sets is where that magic.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think, like, again, it was my naivete of being like, well, have you ever tried to do it like this?
Yeah.
There was other people who were like, oh, they've done that. And that exists. So like, don't do that. They already have that. And these were like people who said this to me who were older, smarter, richer, more successful than me. And I did not believe it. Why? Okay, if it exists, where is it? Someone show it to me. They have it. Why do they tell me it's a problem for them?
Yeah.
Why are all these people telling me it? So, it's hard to stick to your guns, but, and like, I think a lot of people want to like outsource the market research thing. It's like a very big, if you're going to spend 10 years of your life building this thing, or your professional reputation, your sadness, your happiness, whatever, you better know that you're solving a real big bad problem.
Yep.
And that you have a slightly novel new thing. Maybe it needs to be more than slightly, but you have a novel enough thing to be successful.
Yeah. No, I think that's it's a consistent theme that we hear again and again, especially with the military, where there's so many priorities. Everybody's got more things to do than they have time in the day. If you're not solving something that's number 1 or 2 on that list, you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
When you talk, Brian, about those early SBIR deals, and those initial traction, of the early ones you won, how many are you still working with today?
I mean, some of them were total wastes of time.
Yeah,
it's actually one of the more like kind of confusing aspects of this whole thing. Is like, they funded things that were like totally not a thing, like irrelevant. No one really cares, and I don't really care. I mean, the SBIR stuff is really hard because it's also just like, I find it hard to believe anyone makes money from that. You lose money. And like, so everyone loses money on each of those things. And because I had so many of them, I lost the most money. It's like
the more you have,
the more money I was losing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's funny because you said you wanted to get away from a services business, but in many ways, I guess, were those early deals, were those product deals for your software licenses?
Yeah.
Or were they services?
Some of about half of them were going towards the product. The other half were probably like tangential. One was totally irrelevant, and the other ones were tangential, close enough to my current product.
So, net helpful or net harmful for your business?
I would say somewhat neutral.
Okay.
Somewhat neutral, but like, listen, then, I in a matter of a few months, I managed to win a few million, 5 phase 2 SBIRs. I thought it was then going to be like easy to like raise money. I'm like, look at me, I'm a wizard. And then no one, oh, well, this isn't product revenue. This is nice. It's just like, oh shit. Okay. Well, all right. So raising money is going to be real hard. So no one wants to hear that. I mean, pretty much my impression of what investors want is they want somebody who came from Palantir. Like, that's it. Like, I think that's like I think that's what they want.
It certainly helps.
I think they want that. And it's been very, very frustrating because, a lot of people, I do not have a pedigree of a person who does this. And, that sucks. It sucks when you're like, really, really working really hard, believing you're doing something really, really good. But if you don't have the pedigree to it, like, people won't give you a shot. So I had to do things unusually. And one of those things I had to do was like, I had a simple assumption. I go, I'm building this product for war, and for where there's no GPS. Maybe if I just show up in a war and I start to show that it works, maybe like people will want it then. It does somewhat blow my mind that, all these there's a lot of tech companies, startups building stuff, raising tons of money, and they're not doing stuff in Ukraine. I'm like, isn't that the whole point? Isn't the whole point of this stuff? It's like war stuff. Isn't the whole point of wartime technology to fight in a war? Maybe that's a naive assumption, but that is what I kind of thought. So yeah, that was kind of my thing. I was like, well, I'm building this thing for war. I need to test it out and deploy it in a war.
Were you invited to Ukraine, or did you?
No, I was working with a somewhat large drone company based in Europe, and I integrated my product into their drone. They asked me if I wanted to go into Ukraine, and I said sure. I mean, I was halfway there. I was already in Western Europe. I was like, okay, fine. And I did not know anyone in Ukraine. I knew maybe one guy who I had met on a phone call, I think, who worked in the political scene there. And then what did I do? I went on LinkedIn and I looked up people that were commenting on posts of people doing stuff in Ukraine. And then I looked in their background and I just started cold outreach to them. Hey, what do you do? Who are you? What do you do? Are you in Ukraine? I'm thinking about going there. Can you talk to me? And I spoke to a bunch of people, got a little connected, and showed up. Immediately found myself into like a high-ranking political military person's office, offered me some cake, and then asked me to, help him.
So we've now brought ourselves full circle to where we started the conversation. So you're 14 months in. You've been there for some time. Relationships, traction. What does the business look like today? I had maybe 2023, I had a couple sales of my product to, some drone companies and, U.S. Army Special Operation Command, USASOC. Maybe I sold $50,000 to $100,000 of stuff. Now I have, millions of dollars of product sales. But I mean, it was not easy. I mean, I have encountered everything you could possibly imagine and then some in Ukraine. Listen, I was naive. Story of my life. Brian's the most naive guy. You think Brian's the most naive guy on the planet. I thought, okay, this is so easy. They don't seem to have GPS. I seem to have this thing that solves GPS. I'll be there for 2 weeks. I'll make $1 zillion and then I'll go home. No, my very own war dog story.
No, that's not what happened. How quickly the problems of Western big defense metastasized over there. Okay, like number one, there are some companies over there that have billion-dollar contracts for drones. Okay, but guess what? If there's not a requirement for your thing, why would I possibly add your thing? I have this product. It's working, and I'm making more money than God. There's no problem. Everything's great. What problem is there? There's no problem. So stuff like that. Or even if yes, we desperately want this, but we don't have the money to pay for it because we're only allowed a certain profit. We're only allowed a certain amount of profit off of these military contracts. And that profit, if we spend money on your thing,
That comes out
of the profit margin. So it immediately became
You're running up against acquisition.
way harder of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then there's it's death by a zillion paper cuts. There's no it's everything from that to I have so my product is like a little box. That box goes below sits below the belly or the nose cone of these drones. These are fixed wing drones and they don't have landing gear. 99% of them don't have landing gear because they're not supposed to come home.
So one way.
And guess what? It's $30,000 or whatever. Okay. And so every time I test it, I have to break it. How do you solve that problem? Okay. That's a complicated problem. Lead time problems, lead times on new components problems, just having the liquidity. Okay, if the components here cost $10,000, $15,000 and I need to have 20 systems, okay, I need hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm a small business. I'm like a small startup. I don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars just to buy components and then wait months to kind of show up. So it immediately became hard.
Yeah.
It was not easy, but there were some times where I kind of was like, this is not going well. I have this product. And one of the other problems is that in Ukraine, they seem to be, there's a lot of obsession with price. I spend most of my time in drone factories, looking at different types of drones, integrating my product into, I probably have integrated into 50 plus drones over there. Okay. And it's cool. Every single day, multiple times a week, I could be putting my system on a different long range, one-way drone system. And it would take me multiple lifetimes to do that in the US.
Yeah.
So I'm just doing this consistently, constantly, all the time with different types of people. But there's an obsession with cost. And I'm in these drone factories and they're like, Brian, look at this drone. This drone costs $5,000. They're real proud. And I'm like, yeah, and it stinks. And it doesn't work. At a certain point, the jamming and spoofing, I kind of cannot reiterate this enough, is so severe. You literally just at a certain point, all the drones just drop out of the sky, or they just return. It's just an impenetrable force, like a force field. I liken it to Independence Day. That ship is protected by a force field, and you need to give the mothership a virus.
Yeah.
So you could get past that force field. So it is a real bad problem. Nothing works. And I'm kind of well, you guys, you're faced with a really hard problem and you need a really paradigm shifting technology that is not the cheapest thing. I admit it's not the cheapest thing, but it also makes it work. I know your drone is $10,000 and trying to argue that my $20,000 thing, is worthwhile to kind of go onto it. You might be like, well, why is this thing more expensive than the $10 thing? I go, because my thing makes it work. And some people that work, some people that argument works, sometimes it doesn't. There's just the economic realities of the environment as well. But yes, I ultimately got, large purchase orders from, and at a certain point in time, I kind of realized that the people who were paying for all this stuff were not the drone companies, they're the nation states.
You said you're in season 2 maybe here.
Yeah.
Looking forward. So there's some interesting geopolitical dynamics here. We had the White House, the Oval Office meeting with President Trump, Vice President Vance, President Zelensky. Probably not great for your business if funding slows down. Maybe good for the world if that war certainly good for the world if that war comes to a close, hopefully in the next year. But what does it mean for Brian and for Vermeer? Where are you guys as a business? What comes next for you all?
There's still certainly money being spent in Ukraine for sure. If the war ends today, tomorrow, I have large purchase orders with US drone manufacturers, with Singaporean drone manufacturers. I've sold my system to European nation states. So
Ukraine was the proving ground.
It was the proving ground. I've gotten sales out of Ukraine. I got to prove it. I got to be credible.
Yeah.
I know a lot about modern day, missile warfare, and how to kind of defeat it, or how to defeat it and defend against it, I suppose. But if the war ends today, tomorrow, whatever, I kind of have the best of both worlds in that I am a U.S. Delaware C Corp, U.S. company that I'm already selling my product to many of the tier one primes. And I'm selling to them because I have the proof that it works in a wartime environment. I'm also in Europe, so I am selling to all the European guys as well. I have a term sheet from a very, very tier one US venture capitalist right now who has deep connections to the South Pacific.
Are you going to take the money?
Yeah, always. Oh, so rule number 3: always take the money. Okay, it's just I also hate it's do you need the money? Oh, just always take the money. What are you stupid? Take the money. The money helps. Money's going to help me kind of have, grow the team a little bit. It's going to help me get, I cannot keep inventory of my system on the shelves. I buy inventory, immediately sell out of it. So it's going to allow me ability just to kind of have systems, and expand the team and, figure out how to work. I mean, I think my story is unique, and I did a lot of strange kind of things to get real boots on the ground. And now I'm looking for other people who could help me kind of take what I've done with this unusual approach and help kind of get into big defense with a capital BD, if you will. Yeah, and if the war ends in Ukraine today, tomorrow, 6 months from now, all of Europe is going to go through a massive rearmament. There's the South Pacific to look forward to, and they're still selling, to all of the guys in the U.S. I have the one thing that money kind of can't buy, and that is just I've just been doing it. I just was doing it for real for over a year, but it'll probably be a year and a half, 2 years. I was just doing it. And I just have experience doing it. And at a certain point, this stuff is hard, complicated, and it requires expertise.
Yeah. You're the coiled spring. You've got all this potential energy. You've got that experience under your belt now in a way that is hugely credible. And now you get to scale.
Yeah.
So we'll have to have you back in a little while and see how it goes. Brian, as we kind of move to end here, I'm curious, as you reflect back and you think about your own journey. You talked about the SBIRs, you talked about some of the early days. I'm not going to ask you about mistakes because I'm sure for every success there's something, a contra story behind it. But when you think about how you started the company, if you were going to do this again, if you were at Palantir and you get to do your Anduril, right? To use a silly metaphor, what would you do differently in the earliest days of the company?
I ultimately did do this, but it took me a couple of fuck ups to do it, which was, and this is what I tell to entrepreneurs who are starting, do not build a goddamn thing. Don't hire anyone. Don't write a piece don't do anything. Speak to 1,000 people who have a lot of money in some sort of, pick a market, healthcare, beauty supply, whatever, defense, whatever it is. Speak to 1,000 people in that market and pretty much just ask them what their biggest problem is. And listen closely, ask really hard questions. Ask questions like, how can you be so sure? What makes you believe that? True. If you ask somebody why do you think that, and they don't have a good answer why they think that, why should you think that? And at a certain point in time, if you ask 1,000 people what their biggest problem is, there will be, I think, some sort of signal through the noise. And then you need to evaluate, okay, what can I do that could solve that? Who else? There are other people trying to do that. And you listen, you could be a huge signal through the noise and you can still not know how to solve the problem and you're screwed. So, but that's where I would start. If you simply find a bad enough problem and you try to solve it, people at some point will want to pay you a lot of money for your solution. There's so much stuff with startups that you can't control: macro, microeconomics, tariffs, this, that, the other thing. What's in, what's out, what's in vogue. Is defense tech hot? Is defense tech not hot? The one thing you could actually control is what problem am I solving? So you need to control that with all your might because it's the only thing you can control.
I think it's really good advice. And it comes back to your first lesson, which is pick the market you select is huge. It's the whole business.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, if people have listened to our conversation today and are excited about the problem you're solving and want to learn more about Vermeer, maybe want to come join the team now that you're going to scale, where should they go? How should they learn more?
Getvermeer.com is our website. I am on LinkedIn at Brian Streem, 2 E's, like the river, but with 2 E's. So hit me up there, and would love to hear from you.
Brian, thanks for coming all the way from Ukraine to talk to us today. It's great.
It's a long schlep. Thank you for having me.
All right, best of luck out there.